it's always in the bathroom, it's always pretty much playing music. I'm pretty addicted.
The entire world right now is in a cult that we need to be woken up from. I think we are addicted.
Phone was an issue. I saw my phone as if I needed something on my phone, everything's there that I need.
When I have my notifications on, it kind of sucks me in.
The cost of the information age is distraction. But this is not a problem that we can't solve.
5 Live. The Solutions Project. From BBC 5 Live.
Hello and welcome to the Solutions Project from BBC 5 Live. I'm Calum Macdonald. Our brand new series is all about binning off what the news seems to give us in bucket loads, that tunnel-like focus on problems, issues and worries, and instead offering some solutions to begin to explore how to actually fix the things that are struggles, to see the light at the end of the problematic tunnel. Now, rarely does one solution get the unanimous backing of everyone everywhere, so we'll explore the options, but also we want you to recommend your best fixes to the problems that come up. Email us thesolutionsproject@bbc.co.uk. Also welcome to that email address, of course, fun stories, jokes, and reaction to what our guests suggest might help us with our everyday problems.
Hello, alright.
Say hello to Louise Foster. She's 1 in a million. For a number of reasons, but mainly because she agreed to rein in her phone use for us for an entire weekend, just to see how she liked it. Why? Well, because of the way our lives have been revolutionised. Many of us talk about being addicted to our phones, although most psychologists wouldn't use that word, because the connection we have to our devices probably isn't like the one some have with cocaine, for example, and hard proof, well, it's certainly hard to come by. But the term addiction definitely hints at what some therapists see as a growing problem. And there are now even specialists who help those who have severe problems detaching from the interactive lump of metal that we all cling to day in and day out. There's talk of nomophobia, the fear of being without a phone connection. There's talk of phantom vibration syndrome, when you think your phone's vibrating, but actually it isn't. We thought we'd try to match Louise with someone who could offer advice for her as she attempts to reduce how much she uses her phone. And the therapist and addiction specialist, Dr. Narina Ramlakan, swiped right.
Do you have your phone beside you at night?
I have it beside me pretty much all the time. It's by my pillow pretty much.
Okay, and do you ever look at it during the night?
Yeah.
Do you take it into the bath? I know this is really personal, so I'm sorry.
No, I'm not fussed, to be honest with you. It's always in the bathroom. It's always pretty much playing music. I'm pretty addicted.
And what about social media? Do you do much with that at all?
Yeah, I'm pretty obsessed.
Do you do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, and I do the social media for work as well. So I have my own social media, and then I also have my works on top of that. So I see the notifications from that.
So generally, do you think would you say you're finding it hard to relax and switch off? You find that you have to be on the go.
Yeah.
You have got a bit of a sort of the personality who is probably going to get a bit dependent on your device because you like to be on the go, you want to get things right, you want to be on top of things for work as well, and you've got the perfect device that enables you to do that. But it also makes it very difficult for you then to switch off, just by virtue of the fact that it's all on this device.
And we'll check in on how Louise's weekend went a bit later on. It's been at least 5 minutes now since we started this episode, so let's just check in, because if, like me, you're a pretty average smartphone user nowadays, you'll already have checked your phone once. Any more than that, and you're pretty easily distracted. The influential Deloitte consumer survey last year found that 1 in 10 of us reach for our phones as soon as we wake up, and not just because that's where the alarm's going off. And an American survey found that 1 in 10 people even check their phones during sex. Mobile phones have certainly become the most used technology in the history of humanity. Can we trace our love of smartphone back to 2007?
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years.
The year where we spent most money watching Pirates of the Caribbean 3, feature-length Homer and Marge, and one you might not have heard of, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Can we even trace our love of smartphone back to the week that an astonishing power ballad from Leona Lewis cruised all the way to number 1?
Some people wait a lifetime for a moment like
Or possibly even the day that BBC 5 Live was bringing us news like this.
Whitney Houston is preparing to sell off designer clothes and other possessions at auction today. The singer has been told to do so to pay off her mounting debts.
Saving all my tat for you.
And the day that a man called Steve began a revolution.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world.
I'd be the first to say I'm guilty of being hooked to my phone, definitely more than I'd like. Though I think I'm fortunate in that I don't experience a lot of the problems that are kind of connected to our new ARM extension, those sleep problems, financial problems, and also the dangers that come with not being able to detach, like those thoughtless lawbreakers who use their phones while driving. According to the RAC, that's nearly 1 in 3 of us. So what's going on here? Well, let's ask Max Stossel, who used to design mobile apps for a living.
It's sort of important to understand the concept of variable rewards, which is what's used on slot machines. So slot machines make more money than movies, baseball, and theme parks combined in the US. And so how can they do that when you play with pennies, right? But the reality is that this concept of pushing a button or pulling a lever and then sometimes getting a reward and sometimes not getting a reward is an incredibly addictive model. And if you think about it, that's exactly what's happening just about with everything we do with our phone. When I'm clicking the little app that has the red icon on it, I'm playing the slot machine to see what am I going to get. Is this going to be something good? Is this a crush, a romantic interest? Is this a job opportunity? I don't know if you can relate to literally swiping down to refresh your email when there's nothing there. But if you think about that, that's the exact same motion as a slot machine. You're pulling to see what am I going to get. And none of these people at these companies are evil. They're just in this game where they need to capture and hold as much attention as possible. And this variable rewards model is a very, very effective means of grabbing and keeping our attention because the rewards are so significant to our lives because, all of our friends are inside of that phone, right? That's how they're messaging us. Work is inside that phone. It's where our email is. And if we want to be up to date, we see in social media what people are doing. So it's really, the rewards are, not monetary, but they are information that affects our lives.
And it completely works. You're absolutely right. That comparison with email and things like Twitter now as well, you pull down to refresh the feed.
Right.
When you say that, it makes me kind of cringe at how much I've completely fallen for this.
That second it takes to refresh as you pull. In many cases, that's not real. That's put in there because in order for that variable rewards mechanism to work, you need to have that second of delay.
That's remarkable.
Your stuff is often actually loaded, but they add a little extra second because that creates that slot machine effect.
Yeah, so Max, thinking about this idea of companies kind of almost manipulating our experience to feed our addiction, I suppose, increasing our time spent on an app. Have you got anything that would suggest that that's the case?
So, the best sort of evidence I can offer is that there are literally thousands of people whose job this is. It's like growth hackers, and, it's if you look at the makeup of many of especially these large social media companies, and see how many people, like engagement officers, how many people whose job it is literally to just, they're optimizing for time on site, for how can we keep you in here as long as possible.
That's Max talking about the power of the dark side as he'd see it, but he's changed since then, as we'll hear in a bit. A slot machine in 1 billion pockets is one description of smartphones that's doing the rounds, coined incidentally by a former Google employee no less. And that was particularly apt for our friend Rob Shaw, who's 22. His attachment to his smartphone has brought him all kinds of trouble.
If I needed something on my phone, everything's there that I need. You can do absolutely everything on it now. There's not one thing that I can think of that you can't do.
To be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect when I knew we were on our way to meet a recovering phone addict. After an hour of travelling, the car windscreen wipers though swished enough rain away on our approach to reveal, quite simply, a mansion in the northwest of England. We were meeting Rob, a Man City fan, and his therapist Steve, a Spurs fan. To find out how real Rob's struggle's been in the last couple of years. You'll see why the football matters in a little bit. The chickens clucking around the front garden, and the tales of a past British king using this house to meet his lover, all added to my slight confusion about what was going on here. But what was clear was how a phone really took over Rob's life.
It was quite a few years ago when the Blackberries first coming out, and there weren't so many games on the Blackberries, but it was the app BBM, which I'm pretty sure most people know about. And as bad as it sounds, it was mainly talking to the girls. As a younger person, it was just so easy to talk to girls, send messages, pictures, videos and whatnot, and it kind of progressed from there onto the iPhones, which these days you can get everything on the iPhone, and it was more down to the games. Gambling was in there because you can have any app with like all the bookies and everything, and you ended up spending money not only on the bank card but the contract itself with games. We'd be playing poker, but you're not using real money, but you'd have to put real money in to get fake money, and it just kind of progressed from then.
How old were you at the time?
17, 18. That's when I look back and think that's when it all started getting worse and worse, when the iPhone started coming out and whatnot. But yeah, that's the age when I look back and think that's when it started all going wrong.
Yeah. And what happened when it was going wrong?
Money just decreased massively. Loans I took out, it was parents' money I was stealing, using their bank cards as fraud. Girlfriends, I was using theirs as well, using their money. A lot of relationships ended, a lot of new ones started. So that's how I knew it was, well, now that's how I knew it was going wrong as well, and other people started pointing it out. Got in trouble with the police, and it was a cycle that I couldn't get out of, because it was the high you get from when I was gambling on the phone, when you're winning, because I'd win quite a lot amount of money, and then I'd bet the money back on it, and the money that I'd lost, well, the money I'd lose it all, but I'd only see it as the money that I put on I lost, not the whole amount. So it was just free money to me, and these days you can pay everything on your phone, so it's not like it's going out your pocket. Even though it's going out your bank, it's not cash. So I spent so much money, loans, got in so much debt, still paying them off now. So yeah.
Can I ask how much debt you ended up in?
8 grand. Yeah. So it's still falling, but it's slowly getting there.
Did it affect sort of real relationships, if you like, with actual people face to face?
Over the time it did, yeah, because obviously you make relationships with friends as well as girlfriends on there, and then it comes to the stage where I'll be in a relationship, but I'll be on my phone talking to all the lads, other girls, not like cheating wise, but just as mates. But obviously as a partner, you're messaging other girls and whatnot, things go through the mind. But I just argued, look, there's nothing in it, you can still see the messages, but it was me showing them more time than I was my partners, should I say. So, and the same with the friends, I won't be going out with the lads anymore. It would just be you chatting, and then you'd organise something, but no one had ever followed through, but you still chat on the messenger and whatnot. So it wasn't really, well, it dramatically fell with relationships with both friends and girlfriends, because you ended up, you don't need to see them if you can text them. You got FaceTime and all that, like you can still see them, you don't need to go out to see them. So you end up staying secluded into your own little bubble in your own home, and you don't need to go anywhere because everyone's in front of you on your phone.
Not many of us are in Rob's shoes, but it's clear that many of us are worried. The average phone user is thought to touch their phone 2,617 times a day. That's nearly 1 million times a year. And more of us, like Louise, like Rob, like me, and possibly like you, are concerned about how much we're on our mobile phones. So, what can we do about it? You're listening to The Solutions Project from BBC 5 Live. I'm Calum Macdonald. Now, crucially, and perhaps unlike with drink, drugs and other more obviously harmful hooks we get caught on, obsession with our phones is something that actually most of us can probably relate to. For extreme cases, Steve Pope, Rob's therapist, recommends taking the phone away completely for a while, then reintroducing it on pay-as-you-go, so that there's a natural limit to the amount you can use it. And he reckons the support of friends is crucial.
The people around him have to be aware of his issue. Rob on the phone is like the cocaine addict with a gram of coke, and if they see him starting to go into his little bubble, we've got to break the cycle. If he starts in euphoric recall, talking about his gambling days or the porno days, he has to be told very quickly that, hang on, remember the carnage that came with it, because every action has a consequence. It was great looking at pictures of nude girls, and it was great, gambling on Manchester City's latest failure, and I couldn't resist that one. But the fact is that the gambling took over, and one of the things we noticed with Rob is that his introductory interview with us, halfway through, we stopped the interview because he had to see the score in the City game.
These are ideas drawn from experience with real-life patients. And another suggested solution we've come across, one that's more rooted in academic research, comes from Dr. Elizabeth Dunn, a psychology professor at the University of British Columbia. And, well, she says it's as simple as anything.
Take 10 minutes today and reset your notifications so that you're not getting interrupted as much.
Told you.
We wanted to understand how people feel when their phones are constantly notifying them of new information, buzzing them, ringing away, versus what happens when their phones are kind of silenced and put out of sight.
Elizabeth's basing this point on a rigorous study of 221 people. For the first week, the participants maximised their phone interruptions. They kept their notification alerts on and their phones in reach. Then, for the second week, they kept their notifications off and their phones out of sight. Solid work from Elizabeth.
When people had their phones set so that they could be kind of interrupted at any time, they experienced greater symptoms of inattention and hyperactivity. I think part of the problem is that each time we pick up our phone to respond to a text message or look at a notification, it's sort of like a grain of sand, right? Each grain of sand doesn't really matter. It's so tiny. The effect on our feelings of focus, for example, is going to be so minimal. And so it's very easy to sort of let that little grain of sand in. What we don't necessarily appreciate, though, is that those grains of sand kind of pile up, and before we know it, we're left with this pile of sand. And so I think, this creates a real psychological conundrum. When each tiny decision that you're making has very little impact on your overall feelings, it's hard to police yourself and say, oh, no, I'm not even going to check this text message or this notification. Instead, I think we're likely to get sucked in and kind of respond to that one text message. And before we know it, we're, going back and forth with somebody and completely missing out on the, interaction of our children that's happening in front of us.
And so the key to that is regulating our notifications and trying to just detach ourselves a little bit.
I think in general, what we've learned in psychology is that people are better at sort of making a plan ahead of time. So you can think, for example, of alarm clocks, right? So it's really easy to hit snooze and kind of oversleep. And so what people do is put their alarm clocks on the other side of the room, right? They plan ahead for their own failure to self-regulate. And I think that's what we need with technology as well. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, this is a bit of a problem in my own life, take 10 minutes today and reset your notifications so that you're not getting interrupted as much.
Back now to Max Stossel, former app designer, who's now a leader with the Time Well Spent movement and has some really practical solutions to winning the phone fight back.
Have your home screen be tools only. So what this allows is just like a little bit less of a mindless choice. So like if you have, say, like maps, a lot of people like podcasts there, whether it's notes and calendar and text and calls and maybe music. But not to have social media on your home screen, so that when you open your phone to call someone, to do, I'm sure you can relate to that moment. You go into your phone because you had an intention, and then 30 minutes later, you have both forgotten what that intention was and realize you've been doing something totally else. And so the idea is removing some of those distractions from that front page that help you a little bit better do what you intended to do in the first place.
He also recommends that we get an actual alarm clock instead of using our phones to avoid that 20 minutes of mindless, half-asleep, anxious tapping, replying, swiping and commenting when we first wake up. With all of that in mind then, time to check in on Louise, who of course was spending an entire weekend trying to move away from her phone dependence.
So I pretty much started as from Friday. I think it's made a real difference.
So what steps did you take? What actually changed?
Generally avoiding looking at it. In fact, I've just found the temptation quite bad, so I started keeping it in a drawer, or, I didn't keep it in my bedroom at all. I only used it if I needed to make a phone call or if I needed to send an actual text message to someone. I gave myself a couple of times in the day where I allowed myself to just look at social media or do any of the usual stuff that I do on my phone. I went out on Friday, went to the cinema, didn't bring it with me. Went out for a walk, didn't bring it with me. Didn't use it in the gym once and then used it in the gym the next time, and I noticed the difference it made.
What difference did it make in the gym?
Yeah, the first time I just went there with paper and made notes of what I was doing. The second time I took it with me because I thought, it's just easier to just keep a note on my actual phone. But yeah, it is just a major distraction. You just end up faffing around and doing different things. I was noticing I'm trying to leave myself a minute or two gaps between exercises. And you just get to the point where it's just you don't know how much time has actually passed. You're like, oh God, I better carry on doing what I'm meant to be doing. And yeah, I noticed it made a huge difference.
Just listen to how Louise's weekend was drastically improved by simple, common sense steps advised by Dr. Narina to just get away from her phone. She set boundaries, keeping the phone out of the bedroom and bathroom, avoiding using it just before bed and overnight as well. And she's noticed a difference in her health and well-being, and even in her ability to socialise with her husband. It's clear that Louise benefited from stepping away from using her phone so much. Nir Iyal, who advises companies on how best to hook consumers on their products, is also confident that we'll sort this one out, people.
Look, these technologies are very new. It's only the iPhone has been around for only about 10 years. The App Store has been around less. We adopted these things wholesale. We installed all these games, all these social networks, all these great things onto our phone. And so this happens with every technological revolution, right? The agricultural revolution fed the world, but it gave us obesity. The Industrial Revolution powered the planet, but now we have global warming. The cost of the information age is distraction. But this is not a problem that we can't solve.
The Solutions Project from BBC 55.
I love my phone. I always say it's the best thing I've ever bought, and I stand by that. It's changed my life. That ability to connect, to share, to work, to function. It's now at my fingertips as I tap and swipe through every single day. And perhaps, as Nir says, we're kind of over-stressing about how much our phones dominate. We've learned how to tame the car, to embrace electricity. So is this really any different to when other technological advances have happened? But I wonder, and I think a lot of us do, including Andy Grignon, one of the people who built the first ever iPhone. For context, he was one of the people allowed to carry a prototype out of Apple HQ. Huge.
I see, you see right now, you go out to a restaurant or whatever, you see entire families just sitting around the table, with that, white glow on their faces, just ignoring each other at dinner. And you're like, man, well, that's not what I wanted to build. And that's just kind of at a superficial, physical level. People are so consumed. I went camping for the first time 3 weeks ago. And I went to a place where there was zero cell reception. And I was only there for 3 days. But I had some pretty serious withdrawal symptoms after the first day, right? Yeah. I was sitting, the number of times I reached into my pocket around a campfire because we were talking about whatever. And it was just like, hey, I want to Google this. Or, hey, I want to play you this song on Spotify. I want to just do this. And I couldn't because I had no connectivity. And I felt all of a sudden very isolated and alone. And it was a very bizarre feeling. And by the time we left, 3 days later, I wouldn't say I detoxed from connectivity, but that spike of oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm going to make it to well, okay, this isn't that bad. I mean, that's what's happened in 10 years, right? Yeah. I mean, we didn't have that 10 years ago.
So what have we learnt? Well, Dr. Elizabeth Dunn's suggestion to just turn off those notifications and simply remove that on-demand nature of the distraction of our phones, it seems really sensible, and it's something that actually 3/4 of us just never ever do. She tested her idea on more than 200 people, a small but serious study, and people became calmer and more attentive as a result. Also, as we heard, it clearly worked for Louise. As did Dr. Narina's common sense suggestions. They're based on her kind of experiences with her patients, and they just seem so doable for those of us who feel that we're a bit OTT on our phone usage. She recommended things like leaving the phone out of the bedroom and avoiding using it immediately before bed. So these are some of the solutions we've come across talking to patients, therapists, researchers and industry insiders. But let us know how you've become less hooked on your smartphone. What is your solution? Email us, thesolutionsproject@bbc.co.uk. And not from the bedroom or the bathroom, thanks very much. Speak to you soon.